For nearly 200 years, no one knew what had become of England's two missing princes. No bodies, no confession, no answers. Then, beneath the Tower of London, a discovery promised to end the mystery forever. Hidden under an ancient staircase, a small wooden chest had waited undisturbed for generations. It should have closed one of history's greatest cases. Instead, it opened another. Because no one could prove who the children inside really were. And if those children weren't the missing princes, then what really happened to them? The first blow sounded like every other strike that morning. Stone cracked, dust filled the air. Then one worker stopped. His hammer hadn't struck stone. It had struck wood. Buried beneath the steps of an old staircase inside the White Tower were the bones of two children. For many in England, the search was over. The nation's oldest cold case, they believed, had finally been closed. But there was one problem. No scientific test, not then and not in the centuries since, has ever confirmed those remains belonged to Edward V and his younger brother, Richard, Duke of York. To understand why this case refuses to close, we have to go back nearly 200 years earlier, to the spring of 1483. 12-year-old Edward had no reason to fear the road ahead. His father, King Edward IV, was dead, but the crown was already his by right. He wasn't traveling toward danger. He was traveling to be crowned king. Around him rode men loyal to his mother's family, the Woodvilles, sworn to see him safely to London and safely onto the throne. As far as young Edward knew, his future had already been written. He believed he was riding toward a coronation. History remembers it as the beginning of his disappearance. Waiting along that road was his uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, recently named Lord Protector, the man entrusted to guide the boy king until he came of age. On paper, everything still followed the normal order of succession. Then, everything changed. Richard intercepted the royal party. Several of Edward's guardians were arrested on the spot. By the time the boy reached London, it was his uncle, not his mother's family, who controlled him. His younger brother, 9-year-old Richard, soon joined him. Both boys were taken to the Tower of London, at the time both a royal residence and the traditional lodging for a king before his coronation. Nothing about that, on its own, alarmed anyone. But if Richard of Gloucester wanted the throne for himself, this was only the beginning. At first, Londoners still caught glimpses of the boys. A face at a window, two brothers playing somewhere inside the fortress walls, a wave once to someone watching from below. Then the sightings grew less frequent. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into silence. There was no funeral, no official announcement, no explanation. Just a city left to fill that silence with rumor. Had the princes died of illness, been murdered, or smuggled out of England entirely? History has spent over 5 centuries trying to answer that question. It has never fully succeeded. The first, and still the most widely accused, is the boy's own uncle. Weeks after the princes vanished from public view, Parliament declared them illegitimate through a decree known as the Titulus Regius, ruling their late father's marriage invalid. That single document cleared every obstacle between Richard and the crown. His motive looks almost too clean. As long as the boys lived, they outranked him. The moment they disappeared, his claim to the throne stood unchallenged. Richard had the motive. Richard had the opportunity. So why has no one ever been able to prove he killed them? Because motive is not a confession. No order signed by Richard has ever surfaced. No contemporary account claims to have witnessed a murder. Everything tying him to their deaths is circumstantial. Powerful, but circumstantial. The second suspect stood beside Richard through his rise to power, until suddenly he didn't. Henry Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, was one of Richard's closest allies during the takeover. Then, only months later, Buckingham turned against him and led an open rebellion. That's when historians start to disagree.
Some read that reversal as guilt, that Buckingham arranged the princes' deaths, perhaps without Richard's knowledge, and turned on his former ally to distance himself before the truth surfaced. Others see something simpler: a power-hungry nobleman who backed the wrong king twice. The evidence for either theory is thin. What isn't thin is the timing, and in a case built on timing, that's enough to keep his name on the list. The third name belongs to the man who ended Richard's reign entirely, Henry Tudor, later Henry VII. If the princes were still alive when Henry seized the throne in 1485, they didn't stop being a threat just because the king had changed. A surviving Edward V would have outranked Henry's own claim. Some researchers argue Henry had every reason to finish what Richard allegedly started, and the opportunity to do it quietly, with a defeated regime unable to object.
But there's a problem with this theory too. There is no record placing the princes in Henry's custody, and no account, friendly or hostile, ever accused him of it during his lifetime, when an accusation like that would have been a devastating political weapon. Here's the problem underneath every theory in this case. Almost nothing about it was written down at the time. Most surviving accounts were recorded years, sometimes decades later, by writers working under the Tudor dynasty that replaced Richard III. Those writers had every incentive to paint Richard as a monster. A murdered pair of innocent princes made Henry Tudor's seizure of the throne look less like a conquest and more like justice. That doesn't mean the Tudor accounts are lies. It means they can't be trusted at face value. And separating fact from 400-year-old political propaganda is, historians agree, the single hardest part of this case. Which brings us back to that staircase in 1674. When the two small skeletons were found, King Charles II ordered them buried in Westminster Abbey, confident the mystery was solved. In 1933, they were examined for the first time using the forensic knowledge available at that point. But the methods of the era couldn't reliably determine identity or even confirm gender with certainty. For decades, historians have petitioned for modern DNA testing. So far, permission has never been granted, which means the bones that were supposed to end this case have instead become part of the mystery themselves. Strip away the theories, and here is everything the historical record actually supports.
Two princes entered the Tower of London in 1483. They disappeared from public view within weeks. Richard III benefited politically from their disappearance more than anyone alive at the time. And the dynasty that replaced him benefited from making sure the world never stopped blaming him for it. Beyond that, certainty runs out. After more than 5 centuries, the evidence points in one direction, but it never reaches certainty. There is no universally accepted smoking gun, no verified eyewitness to a murder, no confirmed identification of the remains pulled from beneath that staircase in 1674. Richard III remains the most likely suspect, yet most likely is not the same as proven.
And until modern science is finally allowed to answer the questions history could not, this case remains open. The disappearance of Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, still divides historians today, more than 5 centuries later. If you think 2 missing princes is unsettling, wait until you hear about the case file where an entire village vanished overnight, and no one, not historians, not investigators, not the villagers' own descendants, has ever explained where they went. That's next on Historical Crimes Uncovered. Until the next case, keep questioning history.
If you want to be there when the next case file opens, hit subscribe, because history doesn't stop hiding things, and neither will we.